Hey, it's Tony Brueski, and this is our week in review over the weekend, taking a look back at some of the most compelling conversations and stories that we've covered for you of the last week. Brand new episodes back Monday morning, bright and early, 5 a.m. here on the podcast.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski.
Stories of shady behavior by the Murdaughs in Hampton County didn't just start with Alec. It goes way, way back. In all this week, we're going to be taking a look at the Murdaughs and their near century of influence of the residents of Hampton County, South Carolina. To take us there, Michael DeWitt Jr., award-winning editor of the 144-year-old Hampton County Guardian, joins us. He's also authoring the book Fall of the House of Murdaugh, to be released later this summer. So right now we're at the point where Alec graduates and he joins the family law firm. How is he as a lawyer early on? Is he ranking up to the standards and the practices of the generations before him? How do things begin in his professional life?
Well, that's an interesting question. This law firm, is one of the biggest buildings in the county. Small county. Yeah. You've got this monster law firm, and it's kind of keeps its secrets, pretty tight. Yeah, I've been editor of the paper and have known these people my whole life, and I didn't know the inner workings of the law firm. I didn't know what kind of lawyer Alex was. All we know about him was, out in the community. In the community, if he was the typical Southern charming Murdaugh. We go to a Democratic Party. I'd go to a Democratic Party function as a reporter to take pictures, and there's Alex rubbing elbows with all the Democrats and shaking hands and, hey, how you doing? And so he was in the community, and we kind of got a vibe that he was, this sense of entitlement, but nothing really sinister about him. Mm-hmm. But we didn't know the inner workings of the law firm, or at least I didn't, and what kind of lawyer he was until the trial. During the murder trial, we learned a great deal about the law firm, about how they pay their attorneys, how much money they make, and what kind of attorney Alex was. And if you covered the trial or watched parts of it, you knew that Alex wasn't like a lot of the other hardworking attorneys there. He didn't win cases by burning the midnight oil and hard work and talent in the courtroom. He won them by, basically, to quote the Jenny Seckinger, the CFO, he won them by the art of bullshit. Mm-hmm. And he knew how to read people. He knew how to kind of intimidate people into giving him settlements or verdicts or whatever. And so he had a successful practice. He won some major cases, and he made a lot of money. But what we didn't know was, starting about at least 2008, he was helping himself to a good bit of that money. And I think he was able to get away with it for so long because of who he was and that family name. Mm-hmm. If he broke some rules, like they said during the trial, he would do some things like cash one of his brother's checks, or use the law firm credit card in the wrong, misuse the credit card, or charge things to a client, and they'd slap him on the wrist, and he was allowed to pay the money back and keep on going. But as far as the clients, if you live in this town and a Murdaugh tells you, I'm going to get you some money, well, you trust him. And then you live in a poor community. You don't have a whole lot of money. So he comes to you and he says, okay, I got you $250,000 for your car accident. Well, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Or maybe I can only get you 50 grand or 100 grand. And you're thinking, if a Murdaugh can only get me 100 grand, I'm sure nobody else is going to do any better. I trust, when it comes to the law, I trust a Murdaugh. Just like if you're dealing with a banker in Hampton, if it comes to banking, if a Lafitte tells me I can't get any more money, well, I'm going to believe him.
Uh-huh.
And so that's how he was able to get away with stealing so much. He might settle a lawsuit for $5 million and work off $500,000 to the client, and they're happy, he's happy, and nobody knows.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things I'd wondered about with Alec Murdaugh was what we know about what's come out in the trial of his misdeeds, but I've always said this must go much further back than what we're even aware of this pattern of behavior. It didn't just start in a vacuum, at that one point. I'm curious how far back his misdeeds and his ways of manipulating people or bullshitting people, where does that stem back to when you look back as far as you can on that? Where did we first see signs of that sort of behavior?
Well, I think the earliest crimes in the indictments go back to 2008. There may be something older, but as far as the indictments, that's the earliest dates. And I don't think, obviously there's something wrong with his psychology, whether it be from the stealing to the homicides. It would take an expert to I guess,
Yeah.
to confirm if he's a psychopath or a sociopath or whatever. I'm not a psychologist. But I think the stealing began out of need. He invested in a lot of real estate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He went in with his friend, what's his name, Bulware. And Alex was the kind of guy who liked to throw around money. If you went to a bar or restaurant with him, he's like, "Hey, I got this. I got the check. I got this. That was part of who he was. He was a Murdaugh. He had to maintain the illusion that he had plenty of money. And if you were with him, hey, let me pay for this. I got this. So when the recession came and the real estate market crashed, his friend was dying of cancer and couldn't pay his share. So Alex was on the hook for a lot of real estate mortgage payments and other, he even had some other investments and they all went south. But he kept maintaining this lifestyle, him and his family, they kept maintaining this affluent lifestyle, and he had to keep up this image. He couldn't let his wife and kids know that he was broke. He couldn't let the people in the community know that it was all a house of cards. So I think the very first crime happened. It was a crime of opportunity. Hey, I can take this money. Nobody's going to know the wiser. And the attorney, Justin Bamberg, had a great analogy. You don't start by stealing the whole cookie jar. You take a cookie and you wait. And if mama doesn't catch you, you get away with it. Well, you go back and you get you a couple more cookies. So I think that's what we see starting roughly around 2008. The cookies just kept dropping, and he kept taking.
Did anyone suspect this sort of behavior out of him? Obviously it came to light criminally much later, but was there an aura of, well, I don't know if we can completely trust this guy, or did he have it that well hidden?
He was a master manipulator. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
No, make no mistake there.
Yeah.
He could talk anybody into anything. Either through his family name or through his charm. If you ran into him, he was a lot like his father, but even more so. I was sitting in a courtroom in Beaufort County when his son Paul was arraigned for the boat crash charges. Mm-hmm. And I sat one row behind him, and he turned around in court and spoke to me, shook my hand, said, "Hey, Michael, how you doing?"
Yeah.
Like we were sitting in church or something, He just always friendly, always. He reminds me of a politician. Every time you see him, is, "Hey, how you doing?"
Yeah.
Shakes your hand, knows your name. He does everything but ask you to come out and vote. But at the same time, you always kind of got a little shady vibe. If anybody would have told me prior to all this that that, okay, somebody, Alex Murdaugh is stealing money. I would not have been surprised. I think what really shocked everyone was the murders, that he would stoop to a totally different level. And the killing of his spouse was one thing, but to kill his own child, I think that's what really surprised everyone. We weren't surprised by the fact that he was a thief, because Murdaughs had been accused of stealing in the past. Look at his grandfather.
Sure.
But the Murdaughs always were a tight-knit family, and they looked out for each other. And that homicide really surprised everyone.
When you look at the homicide, and obviously, he's been found guilty of it, do you wonder if there's any other circumstances where maybe Alec didn't commit the murder himself, or there was some sort of price that he was then going to be paying, for some of his misdeeds, and that ended up being one of them, to have to then now live with your wife and your son now dead, that he, very publicly seemed to very much, adore and did care about. That's the part that didn't make a whole lot of sense, is how can one man go from being this kind of, loving family guy to, you're killing your family off. Do you suspect there was anything else there, or do you feel after seeing all this, it was 100% at the hands of Alex?
Prior to the trial, I was like a lot of people. I had a lot of doubts. I thought that, okay, Alex didn't do this, that he was connected to it, that maybe it was something he was involved in, and somebody, maybe he was there, but somebody else pulled the trigger, or something. He got into a deal going wrong, and his family paid the price. And I still think that maybe there's a little more we don't know. I think that maybe somebody else could have been helping him after the fact. But after hearing the evidence and hearing, this trial lasted 6 weeks.
Yeah. And
a lot of this financial stuff, I think they could have streamlined a little bit, but it told the tale. His back was up against the wall. He was about to be exposed. This lawsuit was going to put his finances out there. Then the law firm was going to see how much money he'd been stealing.
Yeah.
He'd been stealing for over a decade, and he had to do something to cover his tracks. And I think that what made it easier for him, and this is all speculation.
Yeah.
But I like to put myself in the mind of a character and see what makes him tick. I think he resented his wife. She didn't work. She was a socialite, sorority girl, and other than one brief experiment where she was the co-owner of a retail clothing place in Hampton, she didn't work. She didn't contribute to the family income, but she sure loved to spend money. And they had the beach house and the river house, and she had her standard of living to maintain. So I think he kind of resented her when times got bad and the market crashed. And I think he resented Paul for being involved in that boat crash and exposing. Think about, nobody really outside the 14th Circuit knew who the Murdaughs were prior to the boat crash. Now everybody in South Carolina and everybody in the country knows who they are. And they really, really don't like them. They were introduced to this Murdaugh family through the negative lens of this boat crash.
Yeah.
And so not only did he kind of trash the family, did he think Paul trashed the family name, Paul opened him up to this just gigantic lawsuit. So I think he resented both of them. And I think that might have made it a little easier for him to pull the trigger.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski.
There is much more to come with Michael DeWitt as we continue to discuss the long era and footprints of control that the Murdaughs had in Hampton County for nearly a century. Be sure to press subscribe so you don't miss any pieces of our conversation. New pieces coming out all this week, Monday through Friday, right here on the podcast. I'm Tony Brueski. Stay with us.